Hey, I'm Bree, and today we are going to learn how to make classic chocolate chip cookies. I figured for my first tutorial, I should go with something really simple, really classic, and then we can build on the more complicated and fancy stuff later on. Yes, chocolate chip cookies are super simple, but I'm going to show you how to make, hands down, the best chocolate chip cookies ever. I'd even go so far as to say they are the perfect chocolate chip cookie. Of course, perfection when it comes to chocolate chip cookies is completely subjective. Some people like theirs thick and cakey, some people like theirs thin and crispy. But for me, I think the perfect chocolate chip cookie is not too thin, not too thick, buttery, crispy edges, and perfectly soft and chewy in the center. That's what we're going to make today. So take a few minutes, read over the tips that I provide in the beginning. There's a lot of really good information there. Review the video. I suggest reviewing the video and the recipe first before you start baking, and that way you can become familiar with everything. Again, these cookies are awesome, and they look absolutely beautiful, like bakery style. I mean, you're going to give them to people and they'll be like, hey, what bakery did you buy those cookies from? And then you can be like, what? I made them. They're perfect, aren't they? Anyway, grab your ingredients, grab an apron, and let's start baking. So here are the supplies that we'll be needing and the tools we'll be needing for this chocolate chip cookie tutorial. We're going to use a large mixing bowl, some parchment paper, which I absolutely love. It creates a non-stick surface, and it also makes it so that your cookies will bake evenly. No more black burnt bottoms with barely done tops here. We've got a digital food scale. Look at that, so pretty. I love it. All right, we've also got a silicone or a rubber spatula, a wire whisk, a set of measuring spoons that range from 1 tablespoon all the way down to an itty bitty 1/8 of a teaspoon. I highly recommend getting that set. And then we've got a wire cooling rack, which will just help those cookies cool nicely and more efficiently. All right, let's get going. These are all the lovely ingredients we'll be using today to make our classic chocolate chip cookies. So we've got 260 grams of all-purpose flour, pre-sifted, 9 ounces of your favorite semi-sweet chocolate chips, 175 grams of dark brown sugar, 75 grams of granulated white sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of pure vanilla extract, not the imitation stuff. Don't use any weird blends, just good old-fashioned pure vanilla extract. 2 large egg yolks separated, and they are now at room temperature. And then we've got good old-fashioned sweet cream butter. It is unsalted. I like to work with unsalted so that I can have more control over the amount of salt in the recipe. Don't use margarine, don't use buttery spread, but good old delicious old-fashioned sweet cream butter. It is, again, softened. It's at room temp, just so that it can blend well with the sugars. Let's start mixing. I've got my softened butter already in the bowl. We're just going to pour that brown sugar in there. Dump in the white sugar. Turn that mixer on. So I'm just creaming together the butter and sugar. Okay, so I've been letting this beat for about a minute now. I'm just gonna let it keep going. I just want to beat the living daylights out of it until it is nice and fluffy. You see how light and fluffy that looks? That's exactly what we want it to look like. I honestly wasn't even timing it, but I think I let it go for about 2 or 3 minutes tops, completely. In goes the vanilla. And those 2 egg yolks. Son of a bitch. The eggs and vanilla are in. We want this to be mixed until it's just barely incorporated. Scrape the bowl and give it another turn just to make absolute sure all that egg and sugar and butter and vanilla is evenly mixed. Again, try not to overmix it. In a separate bowl, I am whisking together my all-purpose flour, my baking soda, and my salt. You just want to make sure those are well incorporated before you mix them with the wet ingredients. So we're going to pour all those dry ingredients right in there. We want to only mix it until the dry ingredients are just barely incorporated. I gave the bowl a nice little scrape around the edges and then one quick little turn just to make sure everything was, off the sides there. And go the chocolate chips. I'll let that mix for a few seconds. We want it evenly mixed, but we don't want to over mix our dough. Otherwise, we'll end up with tough cookies. Use the number 40 ice cream scoop to scoop out the cookie dough. If you don't have an ice cream scoop, you can always use 2 tablespoons because I think that's about the same amount of dough. Anyway, I scooped the cookies out, rolled them into a little ball, and then I pressed it out until I think it's about a 1/2 inch thick, maybe closer to 3/8. It's a little bit less than a 1/2 inch thick. What we're going to do is wrap these cookies up with a little plastic wrap, let them sit in the fridge for about an hour so they can get nice and cold, and then we'll pop them into the oven. These cookies just came out of the oven. Here we are about 8 minutes later. I think I mentioned before that they were going to be baked for 7.5, but this is 8 minutes later. They're going to look slightly undercooked. This is perfectly fine. Something to keep in mind when you're baking and cooking. Food never really fully finishes baking or cooking until it is completely cooled. Meaning that while it's still hot, it's still kind of, doing its baking thing. So by the time it is completely cooled, it'll be the perfect level of doneness. See those perfectly buttery cookies baked evenly. You'll notice that on the bottom it is actually pretty much the same color as the top. Not burnt or anything. These are freaking perfect.